What if the resistances and insecurities that you're dealing with aren't coming from inside, but actually coming from the outside world you're living in, society's shoulds and shouldn'ts of what it means to be a woman? On today's episode of She Made It, you'll hear from 10 fascinating women who are sharing their journey with the F word, feminism. Now, I know some of you may be groaning and some of you may be cheering, but regardless of your view of feminism, the beautiful part of this conversation is that it's about a woman's journey and feminism's role in that journey. So keep listening. Here we are. Welcome to She Made It. Today is a super special episode. I'm sitting here with Clara.
Hi, Elle. I'm really glad to be here. This is exciting.
Yeah, and Clara came all the way down to meet me at my rehearsal at the Human Race Theater Company in Dayton, Ohio. We are sitting here with a group of people, the cast of Gloria, a Life, a play written by Emily Mann, which is the story about the life of Gloria Steinem. And one thing I will share, because Claire and I have been preparing for this podcast interview,
Right.
There have been a lot of conversations in my office about Gloria Steinem, feminism, and I would like you to admit something that you shared with me.
Yeah, I actually didn't know who Gloria Steinem was before Elle was in this play, which I'm kind of embarrassed about now, having read about her life, but I'm excited that I do get to know who she is now.
Absolutely. And we talked about how did that happen? How could
I
you
took
not
feminist
know?
theory classes in my English major, so I don't really know what happened.
Yeah, so it was really, we've been having great conversations in preparation. And something really unique about this episode is that the entire cast of Gloria, a Life is joining me here. And I would love you to just shout out so they know you're live. Yay! 7 incredible women are taking part, and of course we have our director, Maria Spring-Cortez, and myself and Clara. We're going to tell you a little bit about the play, but we're going to really get into questions about the women in the play, the story of Gloria Steinem. For those of you who may not know who Gloria is, she is a journalist, an activist. She was instrumental in the second wave of feminism in the 1970s. And the show, if you want to learn even more, is up at the Human Race Theater Company in Dayton. It opens February 26th and runs through March 15th. We're going to have links to the theater, ways to connect for getting tickets in our show notes. And I'm doing something really special with this production.
Yeah, it's your first time behind the scenes.
Yeah. For those of you who have been listening in to She Made It, I've performed on stage as a professional actress, and I've taken a little break, jumped back in here and there, and this is another opportunity to be behind the scenes. I'm assisting the director, Maria, and it's really incredible for me to sort of sit in this position and watch the process, watch the collaboration, and really just remind myself of why I love being in this space and in this room, and what a great play, a play empowering women to step into their truth and their power. But I'm also doing something really interesting. Gloria Steinem believed in the importance of conversation, of sharing our stories, of listening to each other, and finding solutions to our biggest problems, our challenges, by sitting in what she'd called talking circles. So the part 2 of the production is a talking circle with the audience. So I am going to be moderating. I'm going to be basically with the actresses in the production, having a conversation with the audience each night and really discover what resonated with them, what are challenges they're having, and ways we can help each other. So it's pretty cool. So to get us started, obviously Clara's here to keep us on track, but we're gonna I want every woman in the cast to speak. It's a multi-generational, multi-ethnic cast. The way the story of Gloria Steinem is told is there is one woman who plays her throughout the whole production, and then the other 6 women stand forward and play different characters throughout the journey of Gloria Steinem. And so they're playing multiple characters, multiple time periods. And so I thought it would be really cool to go around and let every actress say their name so you can hear from their own voice. And then also share with the audience, with our listeners, what is the most significant role that you play in telling the story, and what about the role you play resonates most with you? And you may be playing a character that we as the audience don't really like, and we see how you, I guess, did the opposite of the movement moving forward. So who wants to go first?
Hi, I'm Sherman Frazier, and I think my favorite role that I'm playing in this show is Bella Abzug. And when I was a child, I remembered seeing Bella Abzug, and in my family, she was kind of somebody to laugh at. She had big hats, and she was really brash. And in doing research on her, I discovered that she was brash because she was a strong woman, and she said exactly what she thought. And that inspires me. There's a moment in the play where I say older women are often more radical, and I know that that's true. And Bella Abzug has given me a voice that's not a nice, quiet lady. But man, she says some really important things. So that's my answer.
Yeah.
Hello, my name is Andrea Morales, and I am one of the ensemble members. And it's tricky to say what my favorite role or the one that resonates with me the most is. So I'm going to say the one that scares me the most because I am fiercely committed to getting it right, and that is Dorothy Pitman Hughes. One of the things that comes up in this play is that the second wave of feminism was really inspired by African American women, and there were a lot of women that I have to admit I had never heard of when we started this process. Dorothy Pitman Hughes I had heard of. She is pictured in one of the most iconic photos of Gloria Steinem, standing next to Gloria with her fist raised in the air. There is also a photo of that was recreated on Gloria's 80th birthday, and they are beautiful and strong as ever. But other than Dorothy Pitman Hughes and Florence Kennedy, I wasn't sure some of these women that were being listed who were really the people on the front lines of the second wave of feminism. So for me, I thought it was really interesting that Dorothy started in Georgia. She then moved to New York City, and now she's currently residing in Jacksonville, Florida. But what she did was open up the first multiracial childcare centers. And in the research I did, it was because she would come walking down the street at night, coming home from work, and she would see children sitting on the stoops. And she started to investigate, and what she was realizing is that these children were sitting out on the stoops because their parents had to work odd hours, and their parents needed to sleep, but there was usually only one bed in the house. So the parents were sleeping so that they could get up and go to their night shift jobs, and the children were waiting outside so that they could take their shift in the bed. And that image has really stuck with me, and it really inspired me to do more research on Dorothy because she was a badass. She really was. And I wanted to get to know more about her because she did have such a strong impact on the movement, both the civil rights movement and the feminist movement. And I think that this play is such an opportunity for me and the rest of the lovely ladies I share the stage with to get to know some of these women who were on the front lines that I really didn't know about, but who paved the way for me and others.
Hi, this is Eileen Ernest. And I think for me, there are two kind of important roles that have kind of stuck with me. I play a 7-year-old, and I think that it's important to recognize that our children are watching, and they're watching the decisions that we make and the decisions that we don't make. And I want to raise feminists, and I want to create strong leaders and women who know their worth, especially as we discovered when we were talking. Sometimes you have to still figure it out, and it's a circuitous route, and you make mistakes and you make missteps, but the journey continues. And I think sometimes, especially as women, we have that fear of one and done. Like, if you don't succeed, then you failed. And I think it's really important, especially with this show, because as we see, Gloria reinvents herself over and over again, and she does the best she can with what she knows, and then she starts again with new vigor. And I think that's really important and strong. And then the second part that really resonates with me is that I play a character right after one of the most powerful parts in the play for me, where Gloria mentions that she is living the unlived life of her mother. Then I come in as a truly harsh, kick her while she's down character and tell her that she is in fact a failure, and that I think that her entire cause is a bad idea. And it's hard for me to make that choice because I as the actress don't believe that, but how many times have we said, have I reached bottom? And sometimes you never find bottom. And isn't it great to be able to look to your left and your right and see your sisters? And they're like, it's okay. It doesn't matter how far bottom is, I'm there. And I'm going to go to the bottom with you, however far it goes.
Yeah, in fact, the play starts with, we all know women give each other courage when we talk to each other and stand up. It's like right in the very beginning of the play, the importance of surrounding ourselves with other powerful women, because it is so hard. Yeah, that's awesome. I love that.
Hi, I'm Ray Buchanan, and I just wanted to jump in because that line about living the life of the unwed mother, or sorry, I just can we just cut that out? Like,
no.
Blooper. It's just that, it's going great. Hi, I'm Ray Buchanan. I wanted to jump in because that quote that Eileen brings up is also very significant to me, and I am fortunate enough to play Ruth, who is Gloria's mother. And I sometimes feel like I myself am living the life of my mother and her unlived life. And Gloria's mom is a journalist and an editor, and she gives all of that up to follow her husband and his dreams, and she ends up having a breakdown because of it and really struggles with some mental health issues. And I personally myself also have mental health issues. I have depression, and so that very much resonates with me. And then in my own personal life, I watched my mother also sacrifice some of her hopes and dreams to stay in a marriage that was not right for her. And I very much felt the same way, like when my mom finally left my dad, really just being her cheerleader and thinking, there's so many beautiful things you could have done if you had done this sooner. Am I going to be the first one to cry on this podcast? Hi, I'm emotional.
Yes, you are.
Thanks, Eileen. So that whole journey feels really personal to me, and I hope to do Ruth and her story justice in my sharing of that.
Hi, I'm Burgess Bird, and I think the character that most resonates with me, as you probably all have guessed, is Florence Kennedy. I'm piggybacking on Ray has said. Unfortunately, I always thought I was pretty aware of the major black people in the world, growing up in the 70s. But until this play and getting cast in this, I had no idea who Florence Kennedy was, which is a shame because she was brilliant. Oh, my God. And just stepping into those shoes is scary, but also it's bravery for my part because she lived out loud. And I love that about her. And she wanted to provoke, good or bad, and the research I did before I started this process and still doing, she was raised in Missouri, Kansas City, Missouri, and she came from a household where her mother told her she could be anything she wanted to be. anything, and that she was somebody. And that is something that resonates with me. I come from a single parent household, and my mom instilled those values in me as well as a kid. So no matter what I look like, you can do anything, you can be anybody. Never let anyone stop you from living your dreams or passions. So she really resonates with me a lot. And it's fascinating that she introduced Black feminism to Gloria, and
Yeah.
she was one of the foreground people who started the National Organization of Women. And she was on those front lines. And not long before Gloria came along, but alongside Gloria. And being 47 now, there are not a lot of Black faces in the feminist community today. Unfortunately, I mean, there are a few, and there are more coming around now. But I think for me as a Black woman, I want young Black women to see my face or Florence's face or diverse faces, because sometimes people don't think feminism is for them in my world.
I think we talked about that. We talked about there are populations of people that don't understand what feminism is. And one of the beautiful things about this play is that it opens it up to a much broader audience in a way that is not so, it's very gentle. And through Gloria's story, and like I think Eileen said, her reinvention and continuing to adapt and change and be vulnerable and honest about her path, the play itself is just opening up the concept of feminism, I know, for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I've always been pro-woman my entire life. We didn't call it feminism back then, I was just a loyalist to women, and I still hold on that today. I guess that's feminism. I'm not sure, but
Yeah.
And I'm still rediscovering that term and how that sits in me in the world I live in.
Hi, my name is Oria Temeski, and I'm also a member of the ensemble. Well, I think that the character that I'm going to have to go with is Wilma Van Killer. She's a lifelong activist, or I should say was, because she has passed. And she's also the first woman to be the elected chief of the Cherokee Nation, which is
Awesome.
it's a pretty big
Woo-hoo!
deal.
Let's hear it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've been looking up a lot of quotes by the different women who are in the play, and one of the things that Wilma said was that when she was a young girl, she never could have imagined that there would be a female chief of the Cherokee Nation. And so when she got elected, she started looking at the other, young girls who were in the tribe and realizing that they were getting this entirely new paradigm, and I think that's so important. When we look at our elected leaders now, like obviously things are changing, as we say in the play, just over the past few years, we've had a lot of female leaders come to the forefront in our Congress. We're still sort of reaching for, that ultimate, like, when are we going to have a female president moment? And, sometimes people make a joke about it, but I think it's so important to have these examples of people who make you realize that things are possible, and some people will say things like, oh, like, we've already hit that point. Like, everything's possible for women, but until you have those examples in front of you, sometimes it just doesn't feel that attainable. So I don't know. I really think that Wilma was one of those people, she didn't have anyone coming before her, she was just like looking forward, and it was just this wide empty space, and she felt brave enough and strong enough to take that first step. And I'm just excited that we're getting to bring part of her story onto the stage.
Yeah. I love that it's Gloria, a life, but all these incredible women are on display. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Jen Johansson, and I'm portraying Gloria, which is no small thing, but fortunately, when Maria and I met to talk about this prospect, I said to her, I feel like I should be more afraid to take this on than I am, because great reverence and respect. But, we talked about it, but that in a way she has become womanhood to so many. I mean, that it is an idea that it's like, for my benefit, keeping a little, gosh, I don't even know how to describe it. I'm not mired in trying to be Gloria Steinem. I can't be Gloria Steinem. I am fortunate that I get the opportunity to help carry this story with all of these wonderful women and with the guidance of yourself and particularly Maria. I think one of the things we talked about recently in a rehearsal was the fact that she seems unencumbered by some of the traditional. She didn't have a traditional story growing up. She didn't have a marriage to look at that was an example for her. All of the things that societally were sort of fencing women in and still continue to, she didn't really have those templates. And so in a way, it seems that she was unencumbered by those limits, those boundaries, so that she just could sort of blaze ahead and figure it out. And one of the things that I admire most about her along her way, learning her journey, is that she asked for help. And when she didn't know, and I think that can be really hard. I think for myself personally, I think about how many times throughout my entire life I have not done something or because I'm afraid to not know, and that's saying something about me. Sorry, here we go. There are a lot of moments that really get to me that have already been mentioned, a few of them. But one of the biggest that I have to get through, like literally be able to say the words through, is, that the hardest part of waking up is seeing our own complicity in all of the humiliations. And I think about, that's really hard, and it's very hard to be at a certain age and look back or look forward at younger women and think, oh my God, I wish I had that. I wish I was like you at that age. Like, I can't get that time back. But being in the work of it and forgiving each other and ourselves and sharing our stories, truly, I think that's the thing that it's like, I think about the secrets that I've kept about my own sense of failure or lack of success or fear or not knowing again. And I think this experience, to get a chance to just open up to a room of other women, and only a few of whom I'd met before, and sharing these things and recognizing, how much healing comes from that. Really, truly healing comes from sharing your story and listening to other people. And I know I've rambled quite a bit, but it's just a really meaningful experience. And I hope that that's what I think we all hope that that's what we're going to impart to these audiences who will come and share this space with us, that we're creating a really safe space, and that we're doing the hard work on ourselves throughout this process, what we need to do to be able to be vulnerable, to share. And I think inviting more of that into the world, into the theater, into the world is really a step forward toward all of our healing,
Hello, everyone. The last to speak, Maria Spring-Cortis, director on the project. What is my favorite role in my playing? Well, it's the role of collaboration. The spirit of this piece when I read it was that I don't know what I'm going to be doing with this piece, but when everyone shows up in the room together, we will know. And what we don't know, we'll figure out together. And so for me, it was researching, of course, all of the amazing women in the piece and the time periods and all the la 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 good stuff that goes with research, because it's putting the pieces together literally of the past that you didn't live in and trying to find the way that you step into the shoes of a time period that you didn't live in. And thankfully, human empathy is the biggest part of that. And this play really speaks to empathizing empathizing with the human condition, specifically the one that is from the female perspective over history of time. And knowing that if you honor that and if you can empathize with that, I'm speaking from us as creatives in the room, creating something that we'll share with the public. If you can empathize with the humanity and the sheer chutzpah of some people believing in something so strongly that they have to give over to it and move forward with those beliefs, is so powerful. And the biggest part of that is knowing that you can share that, and that is a movement is about someone being brave enough and then someone else sharing and saying, I'm brave enough too. And here we go. And then a third person saying, I'm brave enough too. Here we go. And when I stepped into the room with all of these women, I thought, am I brave enough? And all I had to do was look around. And they all said to me, I'm brave enough too. And we're doing it. And we're figuring it out every day. And it's a really beautiful piece for that, because that's the spirit of the piece. The spirit of the piece is one foot in front of the other. Gloria did this one foot in front of the other, sharing that with other people who were believing in the same things.
Yeah, and we're like living the example of the talking stories, which is so core to who she is and how she communicated and how she moved the movement. One of the lovely things that has happened in sort of like the rehearsal process is, I think we alluded to it earlier, that people bring in, there's so many incredible women mentioned in the play that a lot of us had never even heard of. And so I think it was Eileen recommended, before each rehearsal, let's read quotes and let's share some inspirational stories about these women that we're learning about. So we start with this incredible conversation of women of the past, and then we're able to open our hearts to share a little bit more of ourselves, and we learn a little bit more about our own relationship with feminism and our mothers. And my mother there's a character in the play that comes on as a radio or a television call-in, and she pretty much tells Gloria that she is the sole cause of the destruction of the American family and that she should rot in hell. And I love my mom, but that was how I was taught. I was taught to hate Gloria Steinem and didn't understand. And so now as an older woman, and that whole looking at my daughter and seeing how envious I am of her position, but then also trying to define, okay, who am I in this new awareness, in this new reality of what this means to me now. And we said a couple times, the line in the play, there's several lines in the play that resonate on such a deep level, that it's not just about the historical feminist movement, it's about a woman's experience. And I'm just gonna repeat the one quote in particular that we referred to. Gloria says on page 52, her mother's name is Ruth, for context, and we see glimpses into her relationship with her mother. And she says, I think my mother, of all the Ruths, of the great novelists writing just in their diaries, all the great composers singing only lullabies, what a loss when the roles outside limit the realities inside. Like so many women, I am living the unlived life of my mother. And we women of 2020 still say this resonates with us. And I wonder, how do we make sure that this doesn't happen? Like we say, we want to teach the children, and how do we ensure that we don't let the roles outside limit the inside?
So many women think that they are carrying the burdens themselves and that everything they're struggling with is internal. But the reality is that some of it and a lot of it is external. It's from society, and it's taught us to be small. And I would love to just hear everyone's perspective on how do you, in your life, or what is your philosophy on how do you make sure that you're not living an unlived life? How do you combat against resistances in society against women?
And before just one other thing I want to add, because there's another line in here that, when Jen spoke about the hardest part is seeing our own complicity in the humiliations, and that it's not just that we live in a patriarchy, it's that the patriarchy lives in us. How do we become aware and combat that?
This is Sherman. Elle, I just want to commend you on reinventing yourself now. And I did that very thing. I took a crazy turn in my life when my daughter was 6 years old. We left a very abusive man, and we, with no foreknowledge, we moved to a little dirt farm in the center of Kentucky to look after it while the owner was on the road. And I made every mistake you could possibly make. And my daughter has a tattoo now. She's 37 now. She's got a tattoo that says, "The only one who remembers taking her own step, falling in front of me." And I said, what does that mean? And she was like, "Well, Mom, you remember when you would always say, I'm your mom, I know." She said, "I watched you. You didn't have any idea. You fell on your face all the time, and I honor you for that."
Oh.
So, the one thing I would say is that sometimes when it seems like the weirdest, most, do not do this, everybody says, don't do this. Do it.
It's the exact thing you should do.
It's that really, truly, it's
Yeah.
the best choice I ever made. And I
Yeah.
have no idea how it happened, but if something comes your way and it looks like, I think maybe I need to change my life right now, I just say do it. Yeah. So that's all. You're doing it.
No,
That's
I
so
love
awesome.
that. Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
I think this is a really interesting question. Hey, this is Oria again. I love what we've been doing as a group. We've been sharing all of these personal stories and thinking about extrinsic factors that stop us from being, what our truest desires might be to have us turn into. And we've been talking about activism and what that really looks like. And there's a line in the play, and I think it's a Gloria quote, where she says that the personal is political, which is not necessarily a new idea. I don't even know if it was a new idea when Gloria said it. But even thinking about things like, women are still paid 75 cents on the dollar for men, and how does that stop us from really being able to live our fullest lives? And I think that for me, part of the effort is really just being as honest as possible and trying to be a little bit more transparent about my own desires with other women. And in the script, there is also something about being transparent about what we're all making. That's the least we could all possibly do, because a lot of times I think women feel like they're fighting against each other for the scraps that are left over, when really we're not each other's enemies. We should really all be sort of banding together to raise the bar for society in general and say we're not willing to take any less. So I guess what I'm saying is, I don't know, it's just been making me think a lot about, turning my personal desires into something that can be built upon in like a realistic way. I know that a lot of people feel really removed from the political things that are happening right now, but I think there's a general movement towards becoming more involved in a local way, in a a state government way, and then in a federal way, and protesting. All of these things are really, really important, so that we can let the country as a whole know what's important to us.
This is Eileen again. It's going to seem like a departure, but I promise it comes right back around. At a point in my life when I was ready to receive it, I happened to read The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. And in this particular book, the serial killer is talking to the heroine, and he says, "Do you know how I did it? I succeeded in getting into the houses of all these people because as a society, we would rather put ourselves in personal danger than be thought impolite." And I feel like that is absolutely how I lived my life. And I was like, oh, I don't want to be the bitch. I don't want to be thought pushy or ugly or she's too much. And I heard I was too much. And then I heard that at a time when I needed to hear it. And I was like, I don't care what people think of me. And I think that is a hard thing, and that is a thing you have to choose every day, that you are going to take up space because you are deserving of taking up space. And so for me, that is kind of the mantra that I don't want to live in the pastel colors. I want to live in the vibrant ones. And the only way to do that is to sometimes step in it and take up that space. And so I think if we were more, as a society, willing to step in it and encouraging other people and letting them know, you're going to step in it, but we're still going to be here. You're not going to be left out. I think that is probably one of the better and best ways I know to break that cycle of being small.
When I think about our listeners, a big topic of conversation is creativity, is self-expression. How are we showing up? How are we living authentically, not just in what we say, but in how we're made to make. The title of the podcast is She Made It. It's not just about the woman that arrives like a Gloria Steinem. It's about the woman who her life is about making and creating and bringing forth beauty and goodness to the world. And it can be done in so many different ways. So I wonder, how does creativity, self-expression fit into your life and your role as a woman, different than maybe a man?
This is Andrea, and I do want to jump back and just something that you mentioned, Elle, which was that Gloria arrived at this space, and even Gloria Steinem did not arrive at this space. That she stumbled and fell many, many times before she became this icon that she is. And I think that for me, that's something really important to remember as a creative. As far as expressing my own creativity and struggles that I've had, one that I think is beginning to change and yet still has light years to go would be the role of women in casting. So often seasons are presented at theater companies and they, require many, many men and maybe 2 women in the entire season. And while I think that is getting better, and right now Maria is directing a show called The Wolves at Wright State University, as well as this show with all women cast, and that is super exciting. But I think that that's still something that we as women struggle with. In many cases, you will go into a theatrical environment where the artistic director is a gentleman, the director of your show is a man, the fight director is a man, and there's no women on the production team, there's no women on the creative team. And so that can be very, very difficult. I think the paradigm is shifting with that. I think there are organizations that are being created, like Statera, which are bringing that forward as a conversation to have, but I know that that's something still frustrating for me when I look at a season and see that it's all male playwrights, directed by all male directors, and that there are very few roles for women. So that's something that I am passionate about trying to change myself, whether it's creating, a one-woman show that I can produce myself, or just bringing awareness to the theater company. If I see something like that happen, maybe sending an email to the artistic director and say, hey, just so you know, there's really not anything for women this season. Maybe next season, do better, So.
Hi, it's Ray. I also think creating spaces within our art form for women is really important. I'm thinking specifically of an example when I was in grad school and I was getting married. And during my final evaluation at grad school, my mentor said to me, and not to my husband, I'm just worried that you're getting married and you're going to go get a house with a white picket fence and then you're never going to be an actor anymore. None of these concerns were expressed to my husband, only to me. And it was really upsetting. And then we're also experiencing a lot of spaces where women, if they decide to have a family, the theater is not family friendly. So how can we, first of all, not discriminate and say, well, you're getting married, so you can't have a career. And also, if you do get married or not, and you decide to have a family and birth children, how can we be welcoming in our space to women? How can we make our rehearsals family friendly? I mean, I personally don't want to have children, so that's I'm like blabbing. Hi.
No, that's a lot of my story. I had to make a choice because when I started I had been a resident artist with the Human Race Theater Company and working a lot, and the theater was very friendly, but then my husband started traveling. I did have a third child. It was like I had to stop. It wasn't a choice, and it was a choice I made, but it was very difficult to do both. Yeah.
Yeah, and I know that from a lot of friends, that they feel like they have to choose between having a family and being an artist. And I don't think that is a fair thing for us to put on artists.
Hi, this is Burgess Bird again. For me, kind of something I've been seeing recently are in rehearsal spaces. I feel like some of the environments I work in, I have to give 200%, where the men in the cast can just show up and just do their usual shtick. And, oh, it's him being great. Oh, it's him, you know what I mean? And it seems like the women in the room or the art director just acquiesces to whatever they bring. It's okay, he's doing his thing. But for me, I have to be damn near perfect. You know what I mean? This is how I feel. I don't know if that's true or not, but I've been experiencing that lately. And sometimes having a voice in the rehearsal room can be tough for me, and has been tough because the space hasn't been given for me as a woman or the other women in the room to have an equanimity with the men. So that's something which is kind of nice being in the show. I can just be myself and speak my mind and be vulnerable. You know what I mean? And cry and not be seen as weak, And
so the challenge is then, how do we take that energy into the room where we're feeling that disparity? Mm-hmm. How do we do that?
This is Sherman. It is a hard question, right? Because often when you speak up in that kind of a situation, you're labeled.
You're seen as, excuse my French, a bee. A bit, okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
And as Gloria would say, this is Jen again. She took her a long time to learn. The answer to that is thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. It's
one of the things that we can learn from this show, and something that Gloria would definitely advocate for, is this idea of the talking circles. And there's not always space for that in rehearsals, but she absolutely says that talking circles are not just for women. There are men there too, and it's a space that we all learn from each other in. And the more we can sort of advocate for ourselves as women and find our male allies and actually say, hey, it's not okay. I'm here and I'm going to take up space, and sometimes I'm going to cry, and that's all right too. And my creative ideas are worth just as much as yours. We have to feel brave enough to demand that space. And I think it's a slow process, but the men will eventually learn. We're just going to have to keep doing it. It's like when you try to get your partner to keep picking his dirty socks and underwear up off the floor. Sometimes it takes years, but eventually they learn how to do it.
And I also I think it's hard because this is Jen, we can get very emotional. That can be very triggering to feel like you're being silenced in a room, or that you're not being permissioned. I mean, because sometimes for some of us as women, we're still seeking permission to be able to behave in certain ways or to claim certain behaviors. And when I'll speak for myself as an extremely emotional person, that if there is emotion tethered to that, it's very hard to just be able to speak plainly and ask for what you need without it being attached to anger or tears. And, what I would like to see is, for myself, what I want to work on is being able to kind of breathe into that, to kind of lay that thing out where it's not attached to, and so that I'm not also attacking somebody else who maybe doesn't need to be attacked for some behavior. It's just happening to trigger something that's connected to other things in me. I feel like listening is everything. That is the greatest gift that any of us can give each other in space, is to listen to each other. And I think if we can encourage more listening, then we're apt to find it changes the space,
I 100% agree with all of this. It's amazing. This is Eileen again. But to piggyback on what has been said, it's also remembering, because when you're the low man on the totem pole, you see so much because you're trying to get into the theater, you're trying to get into that creative place where you can make it. And so maybe your voice hasn't developed yet, your vocabulary hasn't developed yet, but then you grow and you grow stronger, and you get a voice, you become a director, you become the artistic director, you become the executive director, and remember what it was like and create those spaces for the people who come after you. Aurea gave us a great quote a couple of days ago. Whenever the tribe was making a decision, they were thinking 7 generations in the past and 7 generations in the future are going to be affected by this. And use your power for good. And if you have that power, use it for good.
Yeah, I love really that. Important. And I know we could go on and talk and talk and talk. And I'm so grateful for this conversation. I'm so grateful that each of you shared a little bit of your heart with me, with Clara, with our listeners. I have learned so much from each one of you through the characters you play, through your own stories. And I think, just to sort of recap what Eileen said, it's like living with the lens of love, and it's thinking not just of ourselves in the moment, but the generations past and those we have the power to impact in the future. And I think I'd like to end on that and just remind everybody to come see the play. We're going to be putting all the information in the show notes, and you can learn a little bit more about the actresses. We're going to link some of their bio information. And again, it's February 26th through March 15th at the Human Race Theater. If you are not in town, you can follow the Human Race social media, and we'll make sure you have all the links in the show notes. Is there anything you want to add, Clara?
I don't think so. I'm just so grateful for this conversation and for everyone's honesty. This was really beautiful and really special to be part of.
Yay!
Thank you both so much.
I'm so grateful you joined us for today's episode. I bet you're here because you know there's something more for your life. Whether you're moving into something creative or letting go in order to take that next creative step, I have something for you. My free guide to graceful transitions. You can find it at ellzimmerman.com/transitions. And remember, if she made it, you can too.